Good morning. Happy Monday. Anyway, first Monday of the year, right? So I did something on January 3rd, something that came a lot quicker than I thought ever would. Anyway, I went on the Social Security website. I was going to go to the office in the middle of the month because I had read that if you're going to file Social Security, you want to file like 3 months before, you're eligible. And in March is my birthday. I will be eligible for early retirement, which is 62. Regular retirement is 67 and late retirement is 70. And I have watched how, early retirement is less a month. Regular retirement is more, and waiting till 70 is a lot more. And it'll, change because there's the cost of living adjustments that they put. So they tell you what you would get right now. And then each year there usually is an increase. Not much, this year it was like 2.8. A few years ago, they had big increases, like 8% or something. But, figure like 2% a year, let's say average. But anyway, so it made me think about a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Now, some people will say they want to wait because they want to have a larger check. But I've done the math on it. Number one, you have to kind of think, how long am I going to live? How long am I going to need this? Two, you have to realize I don't have any minor children. I do have a spouse that this money is paid to me, but it won't go to any dependent children or anything. It's kind of almost like lost out there. It could be lost out there if, I die when I die. But anyway, so I looked at my work history, and you can go on, create an account on the Social Security site. I created an account a long time ago, but, I started working in 1981. And worked all the way up to 2022, where I was actually going into a job. And then I did have like a little bit of income, 23 and 24 from that job. It was like, one was like a class action lawsuit or something came in the mail for me, and I had to file that. And the other one was, I don't know, they must have forgot to pay me something or something, so I've gotten, each year, like a little bit of money from the job I had retired from, but I had many, many jobs. So as I was looking, in 1981, I was still in high school because I was class of 82, of that age of, the last of the baby boomers. We're turning 62 and the oldest are turning 80 this year. Anyway, I worked at a smorgasbord, and this job that I talk about that I retired from, I started it in high school, and I made a total of $2,766. Now, this is me, in high school, and I was able to buy a car. In 1982, I moved out in, June when I graduated. And in 1982, I started another job where I was making more money as a waitress, plus said job that I retired from, and I made $5,475. Then in 1983, I was still working at this restaurant and working at the hospital. Now, you got to remember, back in 1983, you didn't have to claim your tips. I claimed very, very little. It wasn't until a little bit later on you had to claim 8% of your sales, but I made $12,512. And so I made, more than that probably because, not claiming tips, but I did well. I did well as a waitress. I worked at a Bob's Big Boy. And it was the first restaurant job I waitress. The first job when I was in high school, I was working at a smorgasbord, and I was cleaning tables. And they used to let you, when you got off work, you got to eat. They had really good food. But anyway, yeah, they would say, because I was, thinner, like, Laura, how do you eat so much? Well, it does catch up with you. And then in 1984, 85, 86, I continued to work, and many times had up to 3-4 jobs in a year that I had W-2 forms. But anyway, so I worked and worked and worked. And as I look at this, there were times in my life from 1981 to 2022 that said job that I stayed at since 1981. It was a part-time job, started out 7 hours a week. And then I got 14 hours a week, and then in 1993, so look how many, from 1981 to 1993, ended up getting enough hours to get benefits. And then I was kind of locked in because the benefits were great, the medical and dental. And I had my daughter, and that's, even back in 1993, those medical benefits and dental benefits, haven't always have been important if you want to take care of yourself. So anyway, the fortunate part was, that was a job I didn't work more than 20 hours at and got really great benefits. And then I worked a full-time job that gave me benefits. So that became the fun with the dental insurance company. So during that time, I was battling with the dental insurance company that I have 2 dental insurance plans, and each one thought they were the primary, but they weren't. It's like, so both were paying the full amount, and my dentist was like, Laura, I've sent it back, and they keep sending it to me, and I can't keep this money. I have to give it to you. And I'm like, this just, I didn't want it. It's not that I didn't want it, but it was like, it didn't seem honest, but we tried everything, and they just, I guess to balance their books. So anyway, that was a long time ago. I always waited, like, are they going to come back at me? But that's been a long time ago. So anyway, as I looked at this and I saw different times where I was only making a fraction of my income from said part-time job that I retired from. And I had 3 different occasions in my life. In the 80s, when I was working at the Bob's Big Boy, I remember that one of the owners, because I had to have like a day off. There was a day I couldn't work because I had worked at this other job. And plus I was going to school. And he was like, well, what do you think's going to pay your bills? This other job or your school? Do you think school's going to pay your bills? And he was trying to get me to quit my job so I'd be available more. And I'm like, I'm not quitting that job. I liked it, even though it wasn't bringing in really any significant amount of money, but it was good, working one day a week, but, and then another time was, in 1990, I think it was 1990. I got a pretty good job, and I had finished college, got a pretty good job, and it was the same thing. It limited me because I had to work around, the job hours I had that had increased to 14 hours a week. I had finished college by then, and then also I forgot to say this, I'm just talk off the top of my head, sitting in a lazy boy in the morning with my apron on. I cooked breakfast. But, I had another boss that got really mad because I had my school schedule, and then I had my one job that I'd worked since 1981. And this was I can tell when it happened because then I switched jobs. I was so upset. I had worked at this job in 1985. I had started this other place, 1985, and I worked my longtime job. And then in 1986, I worked at this restaurant. It wasn't Bob's Big Boy. It was a family-owned place. I'm not going to say the name. And not my family. And worked at my job. I had retired. And then in 1987, there was a big switch because in 1987, they were doing the schedule. And now I made good money at this, other restaurant. It was more of a dinner house. I made good tips, I was, I think, very efficient we used to call them waitresses. I was very efficient, and I've always, hi, my name is Laura, and can I help you tonight? And I encourage people to eat. Nobody ever felt like they were being judged by me by what they're eating. They used to keep track of, they had this thing like they wanted you to, try to sell the extras, like try to sell desserts, try to sell drinks, try to sell extra toppings on the steak, and I did really well because would you like a side dish of mushrooms with that? And you need to save room for dessert. I can bring you a container and we have really good dessert, and that didn't make people feel like, you want dessert, you have room for it, So, I got people to eat a lot. You really should try this appetizer, and I know you're getting a lot, but we got doggy bags, and you can take it home and, and people did that, they weren't, I think sometimes I have felt like when I've gone into restaurants, you feel like when you're ordering a lot, there's an energy some people have because maybe it's amazing. I'm like, why is she ordering so much? But I like to take stuff home. But anyway, so so that boss, they were doing the schedule, and I had started another job, a third job, but it was a graveyard job. And it was at a liquor store, gas station liquor store. But I had started that because I had got audited by the IRS because they were starting to watch tipped employees. And they said that I didn't claim enough or something. So I owed some back taxes. Here I'm like, pretty young, not in the mid 80s. And, the IRS is coming after a waitress. So I got another job so I could pay my back taxes. And by doing that, I had to let this, I have to get off kind of a little bit. I can't stay late on this night because I'm going graveyard, whatever, at this job. And it was finally like, they just took me off the schedule. They're like, Laura, between your school stuff you had going on and your other job that we did, now you got another job, they took me off the schedule. And it was like, it really, I'd been there quite a while, and it was like, okay, I get it. Each employer wants to feel they're, number one, but it just was like, I said, okay, bye. And they couldn't, they were like, I left, and they contacted me, and it was like, no, I'm done. I did that very few times in my life, had said I'm done. And I did it each time some job was compromising the fact that I was trying to be able to make it. And so this was, before you had the gig economy, or, there wasn't no Uber or anything that you could create your own schedule. So I had to balance stuff, working like a graveyard shift where it didn't interfere with this job. And I kind of got very limited sleep, but, and that was not a good thing, but back then it's like, it was a badge of honor, I don't need that much sleep. But yeah, so back to the Social Security. So I filed Social Security Saturday, January 3rd. I went online, and it seemed pretty easy to fill out, and answered all the questions. They asked you different questions, but and they already got the information, I think, but maybe just verifying. But they said if they need any more information, they'll send me an email. So we'll see what happens. It's supposed to start in April, but I did the math on it. So this is why I'm making the video. I did the math. So I wrote down, so if I actually start, let's say, and I get that first check in April. So I wrote down April of 2026, and I, put what I think the check will be. I did less than what they're saying, because it's always less, they estimate it. And then I did, figured out how much money that would be, for the rest of the year. I see I need to make adjustment on that because I times it by 12 and I'm missing January, February, March. But then I did January of 2029, put like a 2% increase, times it by 12. And then January of 2028, did the same thing, the little increase that might happen, and then times it by 12 and all that. And so by the time I turn 67 and going into that January, February, March of turning 67, and I think it's 2031 if I'm doing it right, where my full retirement age would be. Somehow I feel like I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, because I can do that. But I would have made, way over $100,000, that I feel that I could have in my, bank account, a CD, something, and who's to say that, I'm going to be here. We're not promised today. People always say, we're not promised tomorrow. No, we're not promised today. Today, I got to walk, get some stuff done. My car's still being fixed. And, I didn't take the loaner car that they were offering because, you have to have full coverage insurance, which I do. But I'm thinking, yeah, I got full coverage insurance with a $500 deductible. And knowing my luck, which I don't have bad luck, but that would just be awful to be borrowing a car that I say I don't even want a car, then to borrow a car, and God forbid, with so many, I feel, uninsured drivers looking at their vehicles that drive around here and their expired tags and their duct taped parts of their car, literally duct taped, side windows, tires that are bald, tags that are 3-4 years old. I know that they don't, I know they're not paying insurance. And I just feel like, how do you get blood from a turnip? Half the time they don't stay at the scene of it. There's a lot of, sadly, people that are in accidents and then the car takes off. And so that would be, if there's something like that happened, the damage that can happen to a car and all the electronics, because I know somebody banged into this car a few years ago and it was like quite a bit of, it didn't look like damage, but because so much electronics are in the bumper, it was more than just taking out a ding, but the person had insurance and so it was covered, and I didn't have to pay the deductible. It was like their fault, but very nice guy. It was a weird situation, but yeah, so I just think a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and I can put this money into certified deposits that are, paying low interest right now. They're like varying from 2 to 4% or whatever. I mean, I go to a, what do you call it, brick and mortar bank and do CDs, but not, I know some people go online and get higher rates. I like to know I can walk into a bank. It's kind of frightening to think that like a lot of banks are online and stuff. I want to see those people. I want to see a building, so the banks that I deal with, I can walk in and I don't know what's going to happen if those banks aren't there. I'm not a computer banker. I mean, I do online banking, but not a computer type person that's going to look for some bank and do stuff online. I'm not like that. I don't trust it. I'm seeing a lot of scams with that cryptocurrency. People that are, have you seen that? They put money in, like they get it, they call it they have a name for it, like pig something or something, where it's like almost a romance scam where some woman comes into some guy's life and like kind of charms him, but then starts talking, oh, I'm into investing, da 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 da. You should try it. It's really good. And so then the guy will put a little bit of money, like, well, let's test this out. And then they get their money back and a little bit more. And they each case that I've seen, they put a little bit more in and they get some back. And then they put a lot in. And when the time comes that they want some money, it's all a scam. And it's like, wow, I don't trust cryptocurrency. It's not regulated. I do have money in a, I guess it's a like 401k, and I watch it. It's been going up, it had a little bit of shaky time and it's been going up little by little, but that can change during COVID. That thing plummeted when COVID hit, but I left it alone and it just added more to it. It's doing fine, but I trust certified deposits. They're insured, but they pay very, low interest rates. In the 80s, they paid the highest, like 8% or something. But, if you're out there and you're seeing really high returns on something, it's high risk or it's a scam. Be careful. I am a conservative person with that. I have enough, just give me food and a lazy boy to sit in and a comfy bed to sleep in. And I like to watch TV once in a while, and I don't want a car, but going to be getting my car fixed. I don't want a car. I do need a car, though. I don't need a car, though. What do you think about a car? Do you think you could go on with your life without a car? How much money do you think you would save if you didn't have a car? Because right now, I feel like my car is like a pet. I take it out for a drive because it needs the exercise. It's a car that is a 2017 that has like 52,000 miles on it. And my daughter had it the first year and put like over 20,000 miles on it the first year she used it. I lent it to her and then got it back like a year later. Well, she would borrow it every day. That's what it was. She would borrow it every day. But I finally can I have my car back? But, I was happy to help her. I had another car I was using. So, but anyway, and then it did 2 road trips back and forth across the country. And so that's the most mileage. So it's like I insure it for less than 5,000 miles a year. And it's still expensive because it's full coverage. And I'm in California with high rates. All right. I am Laura at Laura Talk Softer because I talk too loud and probably say too much. But what do you think about taking early retirement? What about a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush? I'd rather have that money. And I'm also putting, my husband would be a beneficiary of these CDs. And then if something happens to both of us, I'm putting my daughter as it. Where if I don't get one dime from Social Security and wait and something happens to me, she wouldn't get anything. With 401k, you can have a beneficiary. With my pension, I have my husband and her are the beneficiaries. It had that option. But yeah, so be well, take care, and peace.